We produce between 2 million and 3 million liters locally of extra virgin olive oil. And then of that, the total is about 6 million that's being imported. We're so fancy about it, only to realize the South African olive oils are actually much better than the imported stuff that we get on our South African shelves currently. And the opportunity that I saw when I made the decision was that, can you imagine if we get it right to turn it around and to make that 6 million liters that we import local production? How does that relate to the amount of jobs? How does that relate to the product that's been kept in South Africa? How does that relate in terms of the price competitiveness of the product in the market? The good thing about olive trees is that a little bit of pruning, a little bit of love and attention, and the tree is back to life in 2 years' time and producing again. There's nothing more encouraging for yourself than to help people wanting to start a business or to help them reach the optimal business. So that has always been my objective, yes.
Well, good afternoon, Wendy. It's wonderful to have Wendy Petersen from the olive industry here today. And she's going to tell us about Wendy Petersen and the olive industry. Please introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of background.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I think that Wendy Petersen has been known in the wine industry for longer than 33 years. To hear Wendy Petersen in the olive industry, it's a little bit different. But I've been in the wine industry for 33 years. I started in 1993.
Wow.
Just before democracy. And I started in the quality environment, the old farmers winery, Moni's. So I was basically a quality technologist, and then worked my way up to the product development division at Estelle. And those years, I don't know if you can remember when the Estelle and Farmers Winery merged.
I do recall, yes.
Yes, so...
before my time, before I drank wine.
Listen, I actually have to get the sequence of years right now, because I then left Estelle, went to KWV, and the Estelle brought me back again to say that we want you to head up product development and innovation. And I did that for a few years. In those years, product development was a very niche skill and obviously an opportunity. And not a lot of companies had that. And DGB soon after that started with product development on spirits and wine and RTDs. And they asked me to come set up product development for them. And so I moved to DGB. And then, but I've always had
DGB,
Douglas Green, Bellingham, but it was, when it changed.
Those are names from a long time ago.
It is, listen, it tells our age, but so that happened.
But well-established names.
So most people just know DGB.
And they've gone.
Yeah.
No, DGB is
No, but those, you don't hear the full name anymore.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the full name.
Yeah. So at that stage, I was always I was more in the technical environment, but I was that technical person that always said, okay, now we've done this, how are we going to make money? How does your profitability look like? Where are we going to find business with this idea? So that has always been my drive. And one day, I don't even know, she's a very well-known character in the industry as well. She said, but Wendy, you should actually pursue your business studies, because you're a technical person and a researcher, but not a lot of people that's got that business mindset to drive that. So I started with my BCom degree.
Oh, wow.
And did my BCom, my honors. And then when I did my BCom, I realized that I've actually got, and this is how we should look at our children also, I had a real knack for strategy and visionary. So I would create these ideas and then roll them out and implement them. And when I was doing that, I realized that my passion was really to uplift people as well as I pursue my career. So transformation and business development form part of my love. And then this position in the wine industry opened up to say that we need to transform. That was in 2018. We need to transform the industry, and how do we go about it? How do we provide the skill to new up-and-coming businesses? it was a very rare skill, but how do we translate it to new businesses? And I accepted the position, and it was
That's with Vinpro.
that was with the SA Wine Industry Transformation Unit at that stage. It was an affiliate of Vinpro.
Okay.
The same as with Woza and Sarvis. And obviously last year, the organizations was clustered together. But at that stage, it was Soweto, SA Wine Industry Transformation Unit. And they got 20% of the levies in order to look at transformation initiatives. So in my portfolio, I handled about 95 Black-owned brands or enterprises, and it was about 60 Black-owned farms. So to help them find markets, help them to raise additional funding, mentoring, coaching, skills development, social development. So I did that for 6 years, from 2019 till last year. And when this industry, the merger as it took place, I soon realized myself that transformation, the new era that the wine industry was moving into, was more of a skills development and training as part of transformation, more than it was enterprise development and business development. And that was my specialized area. So I soon realized that my skill is either that you pay me and I just sit around and do nothing, or I need to use my skill where it is actually needed. And then this position in the olive industry became available, and I had a chat with the chairperson, and I said that transformation is my strong point. Business development, especially small business development and entrepreneurship, is also one of that, and developing emerging farmers. And that is exactly the area where Olive needs to pursue further because of the opportunity. And I took the position, and it's been a year.
Wow.
So a long 34, 35-year journey, but that's how I
It must
ended
have been quite a big thing to move out of the wine industry into something different. And what has the year been like? It must have been quite something.
No, listen, it was very scary. I literally took a month to think about it, think hard about it, because I still believe that being in the industry from 1993, I know wine. Listen, you can ask me anything about wine. I think I've made a 360 in the wine industry. And to give that up for something that I used to do, I studied food technology. So oil submissions and so that was in my history. But I've always pursued wine. And to go back to that part where it's a food product, food standards and HACCP and all of that, it took a long thinking. But I think that, listen, I've got 10 beautiful years left over in my career. I want to be still add value to the industry and still work with people that's got a drive to making a success. And there's nothing more encouraging for yourself than to help people wanting to start a business or to help them reach the optimal business. So that has always been my objective, yes.
Jeez. And did you eat olives before you started?
I loved olives. So this is a very scary story. So at the Vinpro offices, we used to rent the upstairs offices, and next to me there was my neighbor office mate was Caroline Poole. And Caroline's snack was always a jar of olives a week. And I would look at her and I said, Caroline, really? And she would finish her jar. And so by sitting with her in the office, I learned to eat olives and get a love for olives. But I've always used olive oil in my house. But as South Africans, we always think, and this is something that I really want to, we always think that the imported stuff is better than our own. So when I went buying in the retail space, I would look at Italian olive oil or olive oil from Europe and be so fancy about it, only to realize they actually, the South African olive oils are actually much better than the imported stuff that we get on our South African shelves currently. And then just educating the consumer about that, because I was also once just a consumer. And until we've done the tastings and actually seeing what, how does the quality compare?
Sure.
You actually touched on something that I think a lot of people might relate to. And that the fact is that when we were growing up, when you said the word olive oil, the word Italian or Spanish was attached to the front of that, because it wasn't a tradition here. We didn't really 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we didn't have South African olive oils
Yeah.
like we do now. There were maybe some. But it's an industry that has grown from next to nothing to being a world-class industry in the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
And we are actually from the Red River Valley. We're from Worcester. And over time, I've seen the kind of drier end of the Red River Valley, like the Robertson, Nay area,
Valley.
going from veld to being this rolling hills of olives. And so our olive industry's really taken off. Tell us a bit more about like what are the stats in the industry? Just
It's
Sorry,
also
it's like,
it's also
you know.
something that is you'll drive by and say, "Oh, there's olives,"
Yeah.
but it's not as glamorous
Yeah.
as you would go in like
No.
the citrus or the apple industry
Exactly.
or anything like
I
that.
think that was part of my my big decision to move into the industry, because I've always said that there's almost like a mysteriousness around olive.
Yes.
You know some olive farmers, but you never hear of them. You never see. But actually, what does an olive farmer? How does the profitability look like? Is it really that much of a success? And I can tell you from personal experience, if something is kept such a secret, there must be a very good reason for it. So you're referring to the older days. I think in the older days, olive oil was you could buy it over from the pharmacy, because it was used mostly for medicinal reasons.
true.
And I remember my mom, for example, using olive oil on our hair when we were children, not to bring moisture back to your hair. But I do think over the last few years, and if I can just look at the window of olive in South Africa, if you just look at the last 10 years, it's developed so much. And our producers has been doing an amazing job in terms of the quality of olive oil, in terms of international standards. The skill of, the pruning, how we go about in the olive industry, that skill has been so developed over the in time. And also the producers winning international awards amongst their peers. So it's a very good position to be in, because it's rare that you find not a good South African EVO, extra virgin olive oil, in the market, where you would probably get imported products that is not of the standard that we are, and you can do that comparison, and then you just realize we've actually got some of the best quality in South Africa. So in terms of stats, we've got about 3,700 hectares of olive trees in the country. We produce between 2 million and 3 million liters locally of extra virgin olive oil. And then of that, there's about, the total is about 6 million that's being imported. So that gives, so if
So
I
we
say
produce two.
we produce 2, but there's a shortage, and we bring in 6, about 6
so
million.
there's a shortage.
So that's the interesting part. So, as in wine and with other commodities, you need to find markets, you need to work hard to have market access and be in a country. With olive, it's totally the other way around. There's such a shortage worldwide and a high demand that we can't even satisfy our own consumption, our own needs. So we need to bring in olive. And the opportunity that I saw when I made the decision was that, can you imagine if we get it right to turn it around and to make that 6 million liters that we import local production? How does that relate to the amount of jobs? How does that relate to the product that's been kept in South Africa? How does that relate in terms of the price competitiveness of the product in the market? And how does that relate for more consumers to be exposed to olive oil because of the quality, and we can go into the diet, Mediterranean diet, and the health benefits of that. But can you look at the potential in terms of health, wellness, good quality in terms of Mediterranean diet, cooking with olive oil, the product just tastes better. It just opens up a whole new, and then I haven't even talked about olive tourism.
Okay, but let's get to the
Wow.
to the volumes. So we produce 2 million. Is that whole 2 million consumed in South Africa?
So there's a little bit, listen, producers are also business people. So
Yeah.
where they can get the best price for the olive oil, there's a little bit of olive oil that is exported, where some of the producers have made a conscious decision not to sell locally. They'll rather export, or they would keep minimum low levels locally and export most of it. So there are those producers, big producers that does that. But there's a South African shortage of olive oil. Yes.
So that 6 million imported, is that all sold in 1 year in South Africa?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
My goodness, my mouth is hanging open.
So
I had no idea.
Remember, olive is used, and that's the work. When I started last year, that's the work that I'm busy with at the moment, because we haven't even scratched the surface to know how many people or traders or agents bring in olive oil from other countries. So I've done an exercise in the last few months, and I can tell you, it is huge. Most of them are situated in the Gauteng province that bring in olive oil. And obviously, if you look at the amount of Italian restaurants and Portuguese and Greek restaurants, and all of them bring in their own olive oil from their own countries. And so putting that in perspective, if we report on volumes, we don't even have a glimpse. And that's a study that I'm busy with. And I've asked BFAP to help me, and I've asked Westgrow to help me, and doing the Nielsen report also, so that we can see what volumes are we actually talking about, considering the imports, the local produced, and also the product leaving the country that's sent out maybe in bulk. That we just because we need to frame this potential. And what does it mean for government to get involved? If we're looking at emerging farmers, how many additional hectares do we need? What capital investment is required if you're looking at emerging farmers to support them with capital and finances? What does that picture look like? So hopefully we will have a clear picture by next year, 2025, because that will actually align with the strategy moving forward.
Wow.
Ja.
So you understand why I've taken the position.
Ek weet amper nie wat om te sê nie.
Yeah, it's not
Does it make sense why I made the decision?
Well, you see, no, okay.
But 10 years is not enough for you then.
Yes.
Listen, this was no life after retirement as well.
But Wendy, if you take a bit of a longer look at this, there was always this perspective that olive oil had to come from the Mediterranean.
And olive oil is expensive.
Okay. Yeah. But now we live in the Mediterranean climate. We've got ample sun. Olives need a little bit less water than something like vines and citrus. So they can be planted on the slightly more marginal areas than the main fresh fruit.
And nobody's going to steal it.
That's the other thing is nobody steals it.
The risk is low.
And it is also not a fresh fruit. It's not harvested as a fresh fruit.
Yeah. You've got more flexibility with olive, actually.
Exactly. So it's not like any of these fresh fruit which you pick it now, it's got to be in cold storage and it's got to be exported, etc. So I'm listening to this with the knowledge that I know of how many wine farms are not making money.
Exactly.
And how many wine farms are being reused for other things, and how much of a shortage of water there is. Yeah. If you could be producing olive oil in places where the current crops are not financially viable anymore, that's phenomenal.
And we've been seeing that, actually. So in terms of the olive trees, they are much more resilient than obviously vine. They do, however, the quality of your fruit is determinant on your soil health.
Yeah, obviously.
And also, obviously, on the amount of water it gets. The less water, the less the size of the fruit, and the less the oil. We all know that science. The exciting thing about olive is that the trees are so resilient, because in the last few months, I've been visiting farms where it's people that retired, now they buy a farm. Oh, there's olive trees. The olive trees are 25, 28 years old. That tree haven't had attention for years.
It's been neglected.
It's been neglected. The good thing about olive trees is that a little bit of pruning, a little bit of love and attention, and the tree is back to life in 2 years' time and producing again. That's the beauty of an olive tree.
All this bloody olive tree standing in that's thousands of years old.
Exactly.
And still producing like similar to what is available now.
I went to a farm yesterday, and this trees, and just with a little bit of love and attention and the correct pruning techniques and irrigation, that tree can be alive and in his, I would call it in his infancy stage, or again in a few years'
The
time.
life after retirement, like you spoke of.
Exactly, and it links back to the retirement. The other beauty is that we still have to remember when olive trees or even vineyards was tested, it was in the early 90s. With climate change, things has changed, the weather patterns has changed dramatically. Can you imagine if we explore olive, and olive has already been very successful in the Northern Cape, some areas of the Eastern Cape, Bloemfontein, we've got farmers in Bloemfontein.
There's a massive olive production in Leeugamka.
In Leeugamka. So can you imagine if other provinces that has got available land explore olive as an opportunity, what that would hold? Obviously, there would be tests and trials in place, but I think that the olive tree, the makeup, and also the cultivar that you plant, there's opportunity to investigate this. And for government to come and or the universities to partner with SA Olive to say that let us do a 1 hectare in each province. Let us look at the irrigation. Of exactly the same and see, or 2 or 3 cultivars, and let us see the potential, because what it holds in a few years' time. If climate change still happen, Europe is not going to stop having climatic severe weather conditions. Not that we say it must happen, but I'm saying that for South Africa it holds opportunity.
Well, as they say in Afrikaans, een man se dood is die ander man se brood.
Exactly.
It's a harsh thing that's saying that somebody's death becomes somebody else's food, but it is how it is in life. When there's a crisis in a certain place and you can step in and create what's gone missing because of the crisis, then actually someone should thank you. You're not wishing bad on them, but if we can provide that. That's
but
incredible.
Also the opportunity, because I think that we live in a global world where whether or not local or international, we can become partnerships and collaboration. So if you've got a good harvest in Spain, let South Africa benefit from that. If you've got a good harvest in South Africa, let the European market, because I think olive proves that there's enough to go around, and in terms of the supporting each other and with a low demand, the high demand for it. So there can be, for example, Australia in the last 10 years, I was amazed that we had a specialist here, one of the international judges that was here a month ago actually, Pablo Canamasas. And he has explained to me just how the olive industry in Australia has grown without European support. And I think that if we look where South Africa is, I think Australia is a good reference point of where we could be in terms of olive production, because 10 years ago, they made the conscious decision of looking at olive as a strong point and wine. And on both sides, both commodities is flourishing. And I see that for South Africa happening as well. On the wine side, it's obviously much more fast-track, but we're sitting with a lot of wine in the tanks, and what is the alternative for farmers in order to have a market.
And the global consumption of wine is taking a big dive.
Yes.
Like I saw stats end of last week that the Californian wine consumption is down by like, the graph goes like this. It goes down.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing. But I'm still flabbergasted that we consume 6 million liters of imported oil in South Africa.
It is incredible. Wendy, this might sound like a strange question, but what prompted it was when you were talking about the pharmacist and the oil for the hair.
Yeah.
Besides consumption, as in to eat it, what else gets done with olive oil?
Listen, I'm a researcher by nature, and I don't believe anything I hear. So when really. So when I started in olive, I laughed because I went home and I told my husband, I said, it's the strangest thing. When we go out to eat with these olive experts, they all take out a bottle of olive oil from their bags, their own olive oil. And that was for me so laughable, because I thought, oh, what olive snobs. And I said, you know what? I'm a person that will listen to the facts, and then I try it on my side. And if it works, then I'm your biggest fan, or I'm an ambassador. That's just how it works with me. So in December, my puppy, my dog, he was a few months old. He had got, cat fever. And his hair fell out, like totally fell out. You can see my hair is also busy growing, but that's another story. So I said, you know what, let me experiment on Milo and let me experiment on myself. So I started using olive oil since October on my skin, on him, on all of us at home. And I can see the difference in your texture of your skin, your dryness. I always had a very eczema like on my skin, and I've very dry skin. I can tell you, I feel healthier and my skin is healthier. But my puppy, you must look at his coat. He's the most beautiful dog in the residence because he's a chow. But have you ever seen a chow's hair shine?
Yeah.
So it proves. I've given some olive oil to my mom and dad as well. When I buy for them as well. And even they say in their condition, they can feel the difference. They're not so exhausted anymore. My dad says he just feels. So I think in a nutshell, my family looks better and my family feels better.
They're using it on their skins.
They're using it on their skins. We cook with olive oil.
And you rub it on, or do you take a shot? Or?
Yeah, I take a shot each day, and that is what I've learned from the courses, is that a tablespoon of olive each day, and it really, I can't explain. It's almost like you just feel better. And I just
You're a very good ambassador for the olives.
But she just said.
It's not
listen, I would promise you, I don't
have
believe
olive oil
me.
daily. In my food, I definitely have olive oil
Don't believe,
daily.
but you've got a beautiful skin. But don't believe me. Try it for yourself. Really, I couldn't believe it because I thought, man, all olive snobs. What can you tell me? Taking a bottle. And now that I know about olive and I've gone through the olive oil tastings, I tell you, most of the olive oil in restaurants are crap. You can smell if it's rancid. You can smell that they've just been topping up the bottle, and But it's now, if you learn the subject matter, you become more aware of what is not right, what is right, and But the same with wine. I don't drink. If you invite me to a party and there's bad wine, I'll bring my own wine. You can feel how about it.
Okay, I love what your answer is, but now I want to ask you again, and maybe I wasn't clear enough. What commercial, industrial stroke uses are there for olive oil other than consumption and what you're doing, what you've just told us about? Is it used in
cosmetics,
in cosmetics,
yeah.
or in anything else like
soaps, candles? They use it in
but
various
just
forms.
remember, you need a fat to make soap.
Yeah.
I've made soap with that soap
Yes,
I
I know.
gave you was I made it with.
Yeah.
I can't remember where
I'm
did I
trying
got the
that at
olive
home
oil.
now. I bought me the soap kit, so I'm going to try.
No, you didn't. You just go to the Co-op and buy caustic soda and olive oil.
Then you mix it.
Yes, it works. It's called a Castile soap if you make it with olive oil.
And also
That's
candles.
from-
A lot of people use it in
Spanish.
candles.
Castile.
Yeah. It's like Castello. Yeah. So there's a lot of uses. I've also, don't want to reveal too much, but when I did the list of why people are importing olive, there's a whole list of things. So I've found that they're using it obviously in the beauty industry. So a lot of cosmetic doctors use it. I also found out that they use it in the science field. The automotive industry.
That's kind of where I was going. What other stuff?
But I'm still trying to find out exactly what they're using it for. So that part of the exercise
And
hasn't
volumes.
been done yet. And volumes.
Because that's obviously not part of that 6 million
yes,
being.
Yes. But remember, olive oil, the levies on olive oil is on everything. It's on the processing, the table olives, the agro-processing, the packaging. So even if you use it in the automobile industry, you still have to declare
You're talking
it.
about the South African levies on olive production or the import levies?
Both. Remember, the levies is imposed on imported products, but also locally produced product. Yeah.
Okay. And another question, we've just spoken about oil, but what percentage of South African olive trees produce oil, and what percentage produce
I was wondering.
olives that you eat?
Yeah, so it's the table olives is still on the shorter volume side. It's about 20%. So 80% or more than 80% is used for olive oil. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, very, very interesting. And as I mentioned earlier, olives in a supermarket and being processed at a level that we all eat olives in our salads, or as you say, straight out of the jar.
Yeah.
That's not something that we grew up with. It's a very Mediterranean tradition.
Yeah.
So our family friends that from Spain and places like that, they always were on the olives, and we were like as kids, yes, I know somebody that pickles them, but it wasn't available like it is now. And as you say, it's so incredibly good for one's health.
Yeah.
and there's an
that's
opportunity
why-
to grow it. Wow.
And if
so
you look
least
at the
you
Italian
came
and
and told us.
Spanish communities and societies, those people live up to 100 and something, So there must be valid reasons behind that. And I just wish that there could be a research study, or is it the Mediterranean diet, or is it the olive oil that they've used? Because I don't think that there's any seed oils, or there's olive oil of a lower quality, but there's not other seed oils,
Yes.
that they
I
consume.
use seed oils to start the fire when I run.
Well, seed oils are new. They are like decades old. They're not
Yes.
centuries old.
Exactly.
So an olive oil, my goodness. So we are gobsmacked. Doesn't happen often that we sit there and we don't even know what else to ask.
But you see, that when I started to read up on olives, when I had to make the decision, it was so fascinating, and I just wanted to know more, and especially when I started, I knew nothing. It was just very intriguing.
So how are we going to increase the plantings in South Africa?
Number one is that, for example, where you've touched on it, where there's a farmer producing citrus or wine or other, and the nice thing about the olive season, let me start there, is that it follows the wine season. Okay. So where you sit with wine harvesting starting from end of Jan, Feb, running to March, April, olive starts end of April, May, right through to August.
Oh, so it's a winter thing.
So it's a winter thing. So you can have that stretch in your employment, and you can obviously concentrate on two commodities. So the one could subsidize the other one. I know that some people's real passion is to have a wine estate that is not profitable, make money. As I said, is that obviously there's an opportunity for wine or other commodities to explore olive as an addition to what they're currently doing. We're not saying rip out your vineyards and plant olive now, but if you've got available hectarage, why not? In order to be a commercial viable entity, you have to have at least 5 hectares of olive.
Just that little?
5 hectares.
And okay, sorry to interrupt you there. What kind of... I'm listening to this and I'm thinking... I can probably kick out 5 friends that I know that's got 5 hectares available.
Yes.
What kind of income can 5 hectares bring you? I'm interjecting a little bit here, but
I would almost say 5 hectares with investment money, because for the first, I would say 4 years, you would need about 280,000 a year to obviously as input costs, and then
per hectare or per 5 hectares?
Per hectare. Okay. And obviously after 5 years, you would only be able to produce from the fruit that you've nurtured. But there's ways of looking at that. For example, I had a discussion the other day on the irrigation side. How does your soil look like? Because the input cost can be dramatically lower if you've got soil that's in good health. So I would say that for emerging farmers, if you've got available land that you're doing nothing on, try olives. I've also spoken to some of the commercial guys to say that how do we bring in emerging and new farmers into the space where there's opportunity? And some of the big guys have told me, listen, even if we have to donate trees because we've got an excess of trees, even if we have to donate trees where there's land available, then we can talk about those emerging farmers starting to pay back and deliver into a commercial entity in 4 or 5 years' time. So there's ways and means of doing this model to make it beneficial for both. And once this established or the new emerging farmer is set up and has got a grip of the olive industry, they can start producing their own oil. But there's at least a plan for how to get you involved in olive, and also for the commercial entity to also act as a mentor, and with the technical expertise and advice, and we've got plenty of those in the industry. So I would say that number one. Number two, we know government is sitting on a lot of land that is not in agricultural use. It's opportunity for government to explore and to get the scoring correct on transformation and empowerment and having emerging farmers access. Because that could really be a turnaround for the economy of South Africa as well in the global spectrum. So that's how I see it. And then obviously exploring and doing the research on other provinces, working with the ARC, for example, with the University of Free State, with the University of Stellenbosch, and the universities in the provinces to say that let's trial this. You do get cultivars currently, and if the soil is correct, that you can actually start harvesting in 2 or 3 years' time. And there's also, oh yes, I haven't even touched on this. There's so much facets to this. The ARC has got we call it the olive bank of rare cultivars that has never been explored before, that was uniquely developed for South Africa.
Wow.
So currently at the moment in South Africa, we are sitting with international cultivars that we brought in from Spain, from, when the Corsa started?
Like Frontoya.
Frontoyo, Mission, Kalamata,
Yes.
Corentina. But there are other cultivars. And can you imagine if South Africa wants to become a world leader in the olive space, and we produce a rare cultivar here and supply the world with, we haven't even touched, because at the moment everybody just knows olive oil. It's when the wine started, everybody just knows new red and white wine. South Africans haven't even been informed of the various cultivars.
No.
And the marketing opportunity in terms of, and unique taste profile in terms of having our own cultivar globally.
Good heavens.
I've got 2 topics I want to talk about.
Okay, I want to ask you something, and that is in the structure, the setup of the olive industry. Okay, like wine, you have the vineyards, and then you have the cellars, the cellar with a C, and then you have the cellars with an S that sell the stuff.
Yeah.
And you have in that line, you sometimes have people that own their own winery, or you have cooperatives. And you have some people that give out to other people to sell, or some that sell themselves. What's the kind of general setup in the olive industry?
Yeah. So in the olive industry, the equipment to produce olive oil, the agro-processing bit, is very expensive. So we do have producers that, we do have farmers that only does table olives or the fruit. Then they supply into a commercial entity that does the olive oil in some cases. And then also that it's sold under one brand, obviously to stretch the volume of that specific brand, which is the ideal model. Then you also have producers that does everything themselves. They also don't even have a selling agent. They do the farming themselves, they do the agro-processing themselves, the selling themselves, the market, they do everything themselves. Then you've got, it's a new model that's up and coming, and I would love to see how this partnership work, where you've got a lot of small producers in the area. They deliver all, they don't have their own olive oil brand, but they deliver into this commercial entity that's got a very strong international brand. They all deliver to that entity, but in terms of what they get for their fruit, they've got the benefit of that, because we all know the fluctuation in prices. So what this commercial entity does, it secures prices for the smaller guys and the protection for the smaller guys, and also the economies of scale.
Yeah.
So I think that it's almost like a co-op model, but not exactly. So I think those are the 3 models in the industry that we've currently have. Yeah.
Jeez, I've got so many questions.
Go.
I need a second podcast. I told you, I'm a very interesting person.
Well, you're the last one for today, so we can take our time, unless you've got other commitments. But, okay. I almost don't know where to start. If you look at the fresh produce sector, and we work a lot with in the whole sector, citrus and apples and pears and grapes and whatever. A lot of these guys have got a little, I don't want to call it a project, but they've got a BEE or empowerment project.
Yeah.
And
like the trust schemes.
And I would say about 90%, 80% of that we've seen is a little, not little, but a wine project.
Because, for instance, wine is easier than farming with table grapes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it needs
a little bit less. It's less complicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
But listening to this now and the demand, that there's a much bigger opportunity, and also with the fact that if these, let's say he starts it now, in 5 years' time it comes into production, the prices are not good or whatever the story is, he can literally just let it sit. Just keep the trees alive, but let it sit till things perk up again.
Yeah.
And then you hit it,
Yeah.
because then your trees are established.
Yeah.
They're fully grown. Like you said, they might miss one season, but the next season they will almost be in full production.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. And listen, I come from the wine industry, very close to my heart, but there's certain things in the wine industry that has gone right, and there's certain things that's gone severely wrong. Being in transformation space for the wine industry for 7 years, I can safely say, and this is now my personal opinion, so don't judge any other executive, but I think that when it comes to transformation and empowerment, I think that because it was also not the blueprint, it was done a little bit in the sense that open for all and everybody gets. So that's why you are getting wine brands, and there's nothing wrong with it, that where people are struggling to have access to land, they've got access to, because there's limited pool of money to help everybody. I mean, when I was in transformation, the levies at that stage in the wine industry was about 23 million rand yearly. So divide 23 million in terms of 95 companies and 60 farms. Everybody will only get a bit. You cannot drive transformation like that. So I think our approach in Olive is a little bit different, where we say that now we don't have the money as in the wine industry, but we will supply. We're looking at people that has got land available, because we've got technical expertise that we can offer, and we've got the commercial industry or the commercial olive farmers that can act as mentors. So we've got that readily available.
And they want it.
And we've also got experts that can provide skill. We don't have the funding to help you set up and plant trees and all of that, but we can look at how does this farmer, and it's important that the jockey is the right jockey. Because I'm also not a firm believer that to open up the gates everywhere and then you reduce everything, you actually dilute everything you want to do because everybody's standing in line. So in Olive, we want to go for quality, and that is the quality people also coming into the industry. I wouldn't like to see, and we've got Ubuntu Louise is currently the first Black person to own an olive brand, and we're looking at getting land for Louise so that he can pursue his passion, which is in olive. But preferably, we would like to have people that, has taking this offering in the olive industry to the entire value chain, from where it starts from the tree, build up knowledge, develop in the industry, because we want people to stay here for a long time and not just launch a brand and then you're out. The investment that is made should be a lasting investment that can benefit the entire industry.
Okay, the next thing. You said to set up an olive oil processing plant is expensive. What kind of, looking for a grinder to grind it up? Is it 200,000, 2 million, 10 million?
So I don't know what the minimum is, but in the last month, I've seen equipment installed by these big guys, the commercial entities, that is millions of rands. And I wish I could take you to that. It's even better than some of the machinery in Spain. And that just tells you that the people that set up these olive farms as an investment were serious about olive. And they understand that the quality of the equipment, the quality of the people, the quality of how you farm has got a direct impact on the quality that you put out there. And I must say, it's the first time in olive that I've experienced such a unique drive towards quality. If a product, we've got the CTC scheme that I haven't even touched about, and every olive oil is extra virgin olive oil is submitted, and then it gets that green seal on the bottle to say, so you cannot get that seal if your quality is not up to standard and if your analytical specification of what we require is not there. So the producers is taking that very seriously, and that is one thing in the industry that we don't want to lose. So people that's concerned about the quality won't send in their product, but for the consumer, it means that when you pick a product from the shelf, it won't have that seal, and then as a consumer, you should start asking questions. So I think that is the key driver for us, to look at quality and to make sure that everything we do has got that quality aspect to it, because it is brand South Africa. And more than one, we're playing in the global field of a rare commodity that is so in high demand. Yeah.
I'm thinking why I've asked the question is and I might be completely wrong. I simply don't know, but I'm just thinking off the top. It's going to be cheaper to establish that than to put a winery in.
Yeah, no, it must.
It's going to be.
I can tell you even the coverage of the machinery on your floor space is much less.
Yes.
So it is much. I think I looked at equipment the other day, which was about 20 million, and that is the Rolls Royce of Rolls Royces.
Yeah. But if you
Yes.
if you build a citrus pack house
Yeah,
and a proper pack line, you're going to look at 40 or 50 million
yeah,
at a starting model.
yeah.
And then the citrus coming out the other side is still perishable. It still has to
Yeah,
go
you're
to
gonna
the.
go-
It still
It's
has
still
to go
perishable.
to the. It still has to go to somebody who's going to buy it and eat it while it's fresh.
And you've got a window of opportunity to
Yeah.
sell that fruit.
You know what
Yes.
I've said? And somebody gives me a piece of land, and I won't plant anything that goes in a container. Just
Yes.
because from what we know and the
Yes.
struggles and
Yes.
how difficult it is and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Olive doesn't need to go into a
No,
container.
it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't get stolen off the tree. You don't need security. Only, I mean,
That
it's a
was
different-
always that's so true.
Yeah, well,
because that was so
but then we
fascinating.
mustn't put this podcast out because now they'll steal it.
It's liquid gold.
Wendy, there's so many things we can talk about.
I've got one more question.
Go.
With all these varieties that you spoke about,
I was going to go exactly there.
is there anybody that's doing like IP varieties where growers are paying a royalty on those plants?
I also had that question because when I started, I asked, but how is the variety, because we've got a per kilogram and a per liter price, how is that variety linked to the price? And it's actually not. And for the mere, but I think we will eventually get there because there's certain varieties that is just much better and more flavorsome than others, to be quite honest with you. But I don't think that our consumer is educated enough yet. And because of we don't have enough volumes to make that distinguish, to say that a Favalosa is now better than a Piqual or, But I think that over years, as the market develop and as the consumer develop and as the knowledge about what profile and it probably will.
But this is not for the consumer, because if one of those cultivars sitting somewhere, or you might have a grower that's got a mutation happening, or whatever the story is, that might turn out to be the next best
Yeah.
thing, that whoever plants that stuff could actually be paying him a royalty or pay South African a royalty.
So there are a few cultivars that only certain producers have.
Okay.
And in evaluating it, you can already see the difference. But I don't think that, say, for example, that producer will not charge more for that versus the other one. I don't think we're there.
No, they're not going to charge more. It's other growers using our IP, our intellectual property plant
It's a
material.
unique value proposition.
Yes.
Yeah.
That-
No, we're
that-
not there yet. We're not, because I asked that same question. I said that because I'm thinking in terms of the marketing and also the value of how you could actually drive better, and that hasn't happened yet. But I think, maybe over years it will start moving into that direction. But if you look at Spain, for example, if you look at Portugal or Italy, the leading countries, I don't even think they are there yet.
No, I think there are very few people who will say this is a whatever variety olive oil.
Yeah.
Olive oil is
No,
olive.
it does say it on the bottle.
It does say, in some cases it does say
People
on the
don't have
bottle.
they don't
Yeah,
have
but
the
people don't
knowledge of
know.
that.
But that's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
The consumer on the street
The
doesn't
consumer,
know the difference.
because remember, every trend or every value to a product is actually driven by a consumer that's educated about that.
Yes.
If you just look at something like wild now wine, Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio was never famous until somebody in the US, one of the Real Housewives, started to drink Pinot Grigio, and then suddenly everybody was looking for Pinot Grigio. So the same year. I think it will be a market-driven demand, and that will happen when the consumers are educated. Because for a farmer, it doesn't mean scrap at the moment in time. Because at the moment, we're sitting with low volume, and whichever volume they can get in to make up that volume. The consumer sees olive oil extra virgin as extra virgin at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'm very honest
Yeah.
when I'm saying this. I go in and I look. Okay, I know this brand, I know this farm, but then at the end of the day, I still buy the one that's the most cost effective for me.
Exactly.
I bought olive oil yesterday. And I looked at the
We
price.
did
and
photos for olive oil 2 weeks ago.
I looked at the price and I closed my eyes and I bought the best.
Now that is also an interesting topic. Can I tell you? I've been having questions about, but olive oil oil is so expensive, 200 rand a bottle, and then I can buy 3 bottles of canola or 3 bottles of other oil. I did the exercise, and I'm doing a program on the 18th of October with Jenny Morris with Cape Talk. We're going to prove this to the test. Because if you use less olive oil than the other oils. So where you would use almost the entire pan to make fried chips, for lack of a better example, you would only use a drop of olive oil.
Yes.
And if you do the price comparison, I've done it, olive oil is actually much cheaper in volume than what you use the other oils.
And the other oils are actually poison.
It's poison. And you can smell it and you can taste it. So what olive oil does, I'm just taking a normal potato. Everybody's got potatoes in their house. So do this test. Cut the potato, rub the potato in olive oil, and put it in the stove or in a pan. And
Air fryer?
you can put it in an air fryer as well and cook it, bake it. Then you take the same potato and you drain it in canola or whatever other oil. You will use more, and what the oil does, it seeps throughout the product, making it soggy, when you use olive oil, it only coats the top. The center, or where the flesh is, still remains soft. So you've got a more crispier product that's healthy, nice tasting, and it's not like you feel like, and I've done that with my family, and we only eat. When it comes to potato mash, listen, I've got a son and a daughter, so they love potato chips. They only eat olive oil wherever we go. They would ask, please just make our chips with olive oil.
So have you got a bottle in your bag?
I don't have yet. But I mean, just do that taste for yourself, because you use less in volume than other oils.
Yes, and I know from exactly the experience you're talking about.
Yes.
I do that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, wow, this is incredible. And there's so many things that I can see the olive industry going forward with. Like, for instance, a South African variety, which becomes well known.
Yes.
That would be incredibly cool. And producing more oil so that we have more jobs in South Africa and more revenue locally rather than importing stuff.
So I've got another one that I'm thinking of now, is that obviously you're busy with the study. How are we going to educate the consumer as to what is good quality oil, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And how are we going to avoid this thing that's happening with wine, where you've got a wine farm that's now classified as the best wine, and all of a sudden that one is so expensive. Yes, there will always be a market for those things, but to almost kind of like let the people don't look at olive oil as an expensive item.
The premiumization of olive oil shouldn't mean that it also starts becoming unaffordable for people to be able to. So I think that, going back in terms of the price of olive oil, I think let's start there. So did you know that olive oil is the only oil that is not VAT zero rated?
Okay.
On all the olive oils, they've been there's no VAT charge on them. On all olive oil there is charge, because they see olive oil as a premium product. They see it as a lifestyle product, and that in our country needs to change. If we drive olive oil, and this is what I'm busy with,
avocado, macadamia, all that stuff,
they all VAT zero rated.
Really?
Yes, not olive oil.
But why?
So we are lobbying with government to make olive oil VAT zero rated because of the health issues in our country. Because if you can get that right, it will automatically motivate people more to buy olive oil than other oils, number one. Because it's an unfair comparison based on price. If you look at olive oil and the other oils, it's an unfair. I call it an unfair comparison.
But if you look at something like macadamia oil or almond oil,
you see, when VAT came in, the olive industry in South Africa had not exploded to the extent that it had, and it was considered this expensive.
But how many avocado oil?
No, just hold on. That it was not.
It's a vegetable.
It came in at a time before South Africa had really discovered olive oil.
Yeah.
You were buying it from the chemist for your hair.
Yeah.
At that time. So it was like.
And where was people buying avocado oil?
Avocado oil is not. It's also not decades. It's only in existence a few. So what has happened now is that government has started to write up a codex, a standard for all oils, vegetable oil or olive oil, and under that codex, we are all. The standard explains if you want to import or export, it's a standard that's been set on all oils. So we're using that to say that. If olive oil is judged or evaluated on the same merit as other oils, obviously it affects all the other benefits or all the other that's aligned to that. So we hope that government will see in that to have olive oil as a VAT zero item, it can be available to more consumers, especially the masses that is sitting with health issues, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension. I can babies. And I haven't even touched on the side with it on dogs. And that it becomes like a health product more than it is a lifestyle product. I think that is the first thing that we should look at. So there's a lot of things that we and also promoting it to the consumer in the right way. At the moment, because of the volume shortage and because of the levies based on imports, which has been down, our revenue has been dramatically down from our association side because we've got a plan of how to communicate to the consumer, how to drive awareness amongst all consumers, governments, all stakeholders actually to take olive seriously. But we've got limited funds. So as soon as our funds, the revenue starts increasing, we can do so much more. But I think, number one, the focus for the strategy is now to look at hotel school chefs because if we can convince them to change from whatever oil to, we're already making earmarks. New up-and-coming chefs that's experimenting, giving them bottles to experiment with so that when they've got a decision role, they choose the right thing, And I think also just driving, I'm working with hotel groups like the Beach Hotel, the City Lodge Group, to say that when you've got guests coming through, please provide us an opportunity just to come and give an introduction on olive oil tasting so that consumers can, because if you've gone through an olive oil tasting, you will understand what I'm talking about. But if that door hasn't even been opened for you to gain knowledge, how would you know? So just starting an informal conversation, there's 3 oils on the table, taste it, what do you think? Prep meals with that oils and just get the consumer to be convinced. And then obviously radio programs, we are busy with these type of interviews just to get the message across.
Extremely interesting. Well, the point is if you can get rid of the VAT on olive oil, you'll be saving everybody 15% on every purchase of olive oil.
The consumers will be happy
and the producers. Like a really wow moment to be able to do that.
In principle, you should be saving, but will the supermarkets deduct that extra 15% off?
Well, that we don't know.
Listen, our biggest supermarkets are also the biggest importers of olive oil.
Oh, yes.
And so the question to the consumer is that how does the imported stuff that the retailers are bringing in, how does that look like in comparison to?
It's interesting what you're saying. You have a very similar problem to the honey producers.
Exactly.
Because there's so much demand and they can't produce enough locally.
Yeah.
They are importing, and they are importing stuff that's not even real honey.
And that adulteration of honey, we looked at it a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, and look where that got the honey industry. So I think that we as South Africans, in terms of olive oil, we really need to protect. And that's why I keep on going back to, we cannot jeopardize the quality from South Africa. Even if it's people bringing in olive oil from other countries and blending it with South African, we have to highlight the fact that this is not a quality from South Africa. We've got a certain standard in the industry, and we have to, and luckily the producers do see the value in that we protect our industry in terms of what we set out.
Yeah, but the producers is preaching to the converted, the non-converted.
You have yourself quite a big job to convince, to get to the consumer and to get government to help you.
I'm trying to think, how do you get the Mrs. Joneses and the Mr. Joneses and to be pro South African olive oil? Because I can tell you now, the people we know in your general
Yeah.
circle of friends are pro olive oil,
Yes.
Yeah.
but they are not pro South African.
South African olive oil. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, 20 years ago, I would be buying imported olive oil. Now I only buy local.
As you see.
Because there wasn't the availability that
Yeah.
there is now. And I just buy local because it is,
Yeah.
it's just delicious.
And also working with affiliated organizations, and I must give them the kudos, is Westgrow in terms of the Made in the Cape that they're busy with. Proudly South African brand SA, pushing locally produced. We've been partnering with him and we've been doing exhibitions with him to drive that narrative, because even if we get into the consumer's head, even if they don't understand the conversation in terms of price, and if we can imprint them that supporting local is actually generating jobs, it keeps our South African entrepreneurship and businesses alive. Driving that narrative will also make them choose a South African bottle of olive oil rather than an imported one, you know. So there's different ways of how you can get the message right and around. But obviously being in their faces and also doing the old, you know, when we used to do where you go to the supermarket
Yes.
Yeah,
and you
in-store
give cups to the
promotion.
in-store promotions, being in the consumer at festivals, having consumers taste. And I think it will still take a few years to get there, but at least you're doing something with a limited amount of resources. Yeah.
Goodness.
If somebody's listening to this that would be interested in getting involved in that, because I'm just often I just say things that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Like my wife's birthday is in just over a week, and we've got about 20 odd people coming to our house for
Yeah.
a kuier. Well, and it's going to be fun,
Yes.
and drinks will be had, and songs will be sung. And
Yes. As one does.
As one does.
But it's something like that where you get just 2 or 3 bottles and you just say to them, come, before we all start, this is it'll help with the bubblers tomorrow. But do something like that.
So we've started to do that. I've got a wonderful group of technical tasters, and they've become they're friends of SA Olive, I call them, because they do ambassador work without being paid for it. We've got these experts in the industry that's really providing their time to SA Olive free of charge. So, and they've all got a international qualification for olive oil tasting. So what we do is we send them out. And they would, for example, if you've got a party at home, we would say, take 3 bottles of olive oil with you, present your olive oil tasting, so people would need to get taste and supply them with samples. In some cases, there is a small charge just for their traveling to get there and so, but we've started to do that. And we can see that there's already a lot of, and people come back to say that, sure, Wendy, we want to do that. We even have corporates as part of the end of year function to say, instead of a wine tasting or instead of us giving small little gifts, we want to do a package where people are actually exposed to olive oil tastings. And as their corporate gifts, they want to include olive oil in the packages. So there's ways and means of going about it. I'm actually exploring as an additional income stream for us to look at corporate gifts that we will have available on our website, like small little tasting kits that you can buy, and you can do your own tasting at home with your guests, or that you can buy the tasting consumables, for example, the cups, the lids, everything on our website. And indirectly, we can generate income from that to obviously use for brand awareness. Yeah.
When you talk about the tasting and all these things, I've done an olive oil. You've done one as well. So it is quite eye-opening to do that. And again, this is my personal thing. I'm worried that it might get that wine farm connotation to it.
But there's a big opportunity in olive tourism, and I'm doing an olive strategy now that we'll implement in 2025, because we've got an olive tourism route already. I mean, you can take routes, and if you look at the farms, so we've got a map with a lot of farms on it that's got olive oil. So everyone does something different. So, for example, you can go for an olive oil tasting. So if you're a tourist and you come to the SA Olive offices and say, but I would like to explore olive, but I would like to do an olive oil tasting, then I can give you a guide of where olive oil tastings you can go to. If you want to say, Wendy, I want a health and beauty spa engagement with olive, then there's farms highlighted that you can go to. So developing an olive route with the specific tourist needs in mind. But I do think that the olive tourism aspect we haven't even started yet.
And there is huge opportunity.
There's huge opportunities. There's huge opportunities, even in terms of being involved in the processing of olive. Consumers or tourists coming in and say, but I'll come in for a harvest and I want to spend 3 or 4 days with a specific producer to see how olive oil is made. And then staying and then experiencing the olive oil. So we are exploring that, and we're going to do that with Westgrow. Obviously, they have got a strong tourism leg to it, that we can actually line the wine tourism with the olive tourism, because there's a lot of synergies.
Very much so. Very, very much so. Wow, that is so exciting.
It is fascinating.
Wendy, we can chat all day. In fact, we're probably on our way to all night. But we need to kind of wrap it up now. We have a closing tradition, and that is where we ask a random question left by a previous person for the next person, then they don't know who it is.
Oh, my word.
And they're quite fun, and it's quite interesting. So I'm going to just throw this one over to you. Almost start to think of one.
But where's with the list of questions that we had?
Let me get us a list of questions.
Oh, my word.
No, it's not that bad. It's actually quite fun. Okay. Which of your 24 hours per day is the most valuable to you, and why? Which part of the day is the most important to you, and
Not
why?
to the olive industry, to you.
No, that's an easy question for me. So I normally wake up at 3:30 in the morning. So between 3:30 and I would say, number one, my family time, always with my family. But in the mornings between 3:30 and 3:50, I always have my quiet time. And it's either me sitting outside on the stoop area with my puppy. But just, that being awake before everybody's awake is very, for me, it's personally. And then also just setting your balance for the day. That time is very valuable for me. And then obviously in the evening, spending time with my family.
Wow. Louise has cold water swimming every morning.
Is it? You're like my son.
Yes,
I
cold
can't
water
do
swimming,
that.
winter and summer with my husband, incredibly good for one's brain and your general health.
Yeah.
And it certainly wakes you up in the
It
morning.
gives you that
Okay,
zest.
but now there's something new you must add. At the end of the pool, you must put a shot of olive oil there.
There you go. Something to aim for.
I sit on the stoop overlooking the pool, but I'm never in the pool.
Wendy, this has been incredible. It's been so much more than I ever even imagined or expected.
Same here.
It's not often I can say that at the end of a podcast. You have kind of blown the tops of our heads off, and I think we'll need to speak to you again sometime. But thank you so much for coming in. It's been fantastic.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. And I think, yes, like you, I'm glad that you are excited about olive as what I was when I first.
I wasn't
was
as
given the
excited as I am now.
opportunity. Yeah.
Before today, olives just also like.
The trees look so grey, hey, but you don't know.
I've got 2 olive trees in my garden. I must tell you this. I planted them when my daughter was born. It's 11 years ago. I planted them then. I have not given them any attention.
What?
They are, and I said I'm not going to let them go big because when they do bear one day, I don't want to tickle to get the stuff off. Last year, I put a little irrigation pipe and everything in, started giving them water, got my first harvest this year.
Oh, my word. You see, you can become an olive farmer.
I made about 4 or 5 pots of olives from them, and they're blossoming again. So hopefully it will go. But yeah.
You will look at them with new eyes now after we've chatted to Wendy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Wendy?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's
It was
been
lovely.
Right.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you so much. Yellow.